This is the Mind Body Detox Podcast, where we discuss all things integrative health and wellness, interviewing folks from all over the world, sharing insights and wisdom for how to live a healthier life in mind, body, and spirit. Welcome back to the Mind Body Detox Podcast. I'm your host, Mind Body Medium Kara Lovehart, and in today's show, I won't be your host. I'm actually going to be dropping in an episode from Sarah Johnson's program. She interviewed me about community, about the history of me cultivating community, creating safe spaces, and also knowing what to do when you're in a space that might not be safe, how you navigate if you've had experiences in any space that maybe make you feel uncomfortable if you're joining into one. And this episode, I am so grateful. She's been so generous to share this, and we can share it on the Mind Body Detox podcast. Please check out the show notes if you want to learn more about Sarah and her program and how to get in touch with her. Of course, next episode, we're going to be going into raising children with Sarah. Sarah is a mental health professional. And just so you know, this episode was too good for me not to reshare. So there is a difference in the audio quality because of the difference in the devices that we use to record from between me and Sarah. But I definitely felt like it was important for you guys to hear it. So without further ado, let's get started, and you'll hear, and we'll go right into Sarah Johnson introducing me as we talk about community.
Today we have Kara Lovehart, who is an intuitive executive coach, mind body medium, trauma-informed massage therapist, and advanced energy medicine educator, specializing in integrative approaches for mind, body, spirit wellness for leaders, organizations, and individuals. She is the host of the Mind Body Detox Podcast, as well as the CEO of Firefly Hollow Holistic Wellness Center, New Visions Holistic Expo, and the director of community programming for the Central Pennsylvania Psychedelic Society. And she guides people towards wellness, supporting safer spaces for community building and cultivating robust organizational team cultures. And that's been since 2001. So, hey, Kara, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you, Sarah, for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And we're talking about community today.
Yep, a topic very close and dear to my heart, especially in the world today.
Yes, I'm very excited to get into this. And so tell us a little bit about kind of what brought you to this point in life with where you are with Firefly and the New Visions Expo. What brought you here?
Well, I was actually enrolled to be a chiropractor, and I was working for a chiropractor during chiropractic school. And part of my energy sensitivity as a medium sort of turned way back on during that process. And so, of course, I went and I said, well, I'm going to go and legally be able to get my hands on people now. Let me go get licensed to be a massage therapist, because it was really helpful not only to see energetically in people's aura what was going on with their pain, but also the connection between the mind and body. So that led me to rent my own room out of a building, start doing massage, work with coaching clients, work with readings, and then start to build my arsenal of amazing team community practitioners, because there's so much that's beyond my scope that I know I can refer clients to. And just that unique perspective I have on seeing people in that light really supports that healing potential. So in building a community, and that was, of course, part of the process of, just, hey, you want to rent a room out of my clinic and let's, be colleagues. And then it turned into, wait a minute, now I'm running a business. Wait a minute, now I have employees. Wait a minute. And so my spirit parents, I'll call them that, Bill and Bob, they are the owners of New Visions bookstore. They've been open since 1987. So they are the metaphysical, spiritual, conscious living resource. Or I guess you could say like in the area, they're the Mecca in the area. And so they've been doing it for a long time. And so I ended up working there with them, supporting them, doing readings, doing some classes. And when they were coming closer to retirement, they were talking about that they need someone to take over the expo. And that event was started in 2001. That was, we were supporting them with it, but I knew that with the changes we were seeing in the collective, with more interest in self-directed spirituality and with the increase in saturation with spiritual-based practitioners, and then the more reports of people having unsafe experiences,
Mm.
or with unvetted or unlicensed practitioners, it sometimes is a thing where they don't have ethical standards, they haven't gone to school to be a psychic reader, they don't have those backgrounds, there's licensees. And so it just became another avenue for me to say, okay, well, I have a very high standard for our practice in our clinic because I've seen so much happen.
Mm.
And the unfortunate seedy underbelly of the spiritual community that happens, but also the beautiful things that happen. So how can I create spaces that are safer for community to enter into, and including the expo? So that is, in a nutshell, my journey running the organizations.
And so you had Firefly Hollow first, and then kind of transitioned into the expo and with the bookstore and those things.
Yes.
Great. And so I think one of the things that I like to talk about when it comes to community is kind of what you mentioned, is the potential for people to sometimes be fearful of community or nervous about being part of a community. So let's first talk about maybe why is it important? What's the benefit of being in community?
There are lots of benefits, I would say. So in general, community is, I say, one of the fast track ways for your own personal development and personal growth. Because if you are leaning into a community, whether or not it's one that's fully aligned with you or not, there is a lot of opportunity for learning boundaries, for learning communication, for learning to not take things personally, for learning your self-worth and knowing who you are. And I think in general, community and the reflection of humanity around us, whether it's our family or our organizations we work for, or a community-based organization we're a part of, those are all opportunities to see reflections of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the baseline for self-development, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And I love that reframe in terms of it being a fast track, because I think things you mentioned are the very things that sometimes we get nervous about. But if you are on this path of healing and self-development, there's also things that you want. Like the very things that you want can be found in community. So yeah, that's great. And along those lines, I think my experience with community has been very much what you mentioned in terms of sometimes being nervous and feeling like I want people to be a certain way. And maybe even like my perfectionist tendencies to come up and say, if these people don't behave this way, then I'm going to leave the community. And particularly my thing was about safety. I know sometimes other people's could be about power or worthiness or all those things. So any advice for those types of people who are maybe dealing with how you want community to be versus how it might be for you?
Yeah. So the reality versus the idealism,
Mm-hmm.
the idealism, right? So I feel it's important to know your boundaries and know what you're looking for. So writing down, if it is, you have triggers around power or safety, if you can write down what your non-negotiables are, saying, if I'm entering into a community, this is the things that are red flags for me that I will look out for. But even if you see the red flags, maybe not making assumptions, but whoever is the organizational leader, if you are seeing signs that they're open to communicate, they're open to receive, and they're in a space of leadership within their own development that they can, for the most part, this is sometimes hard to tell unless you get in there, if that they won't take things personally, that they're really genuinely open. Because I think what happens a lot of time with community-based leaders is they're not aware, they don't get feedback, especially in the spiritual communities. These communities we're really a buttload of people pleasers. All right. So we are, I don't know, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to tell anybody what's going on, or I didn't feel safe there.
Yeah.
And so we never know. And a lot of times community-based leaders, until they get some sort of training, understanding what's safer for people, we even don't understand that sometimes the language we use is maybe scary. And there may have been bad experiences elsewhere. So we have to understand where we're making an assumption of, okay, this is somewhere else I've experienced this. So the 4 agreements are kind of like really powerful to follow in everything. So not making assumptions, don't take things personally, always do your best and be impeccable with your words. So how you could apply those when you're entering into community, and maybe facing that part of yourself, if it is a perfectionist, one that's, you're addressing something you want to look at. But I would say, if you really are getting signs that it's not safe or it's not living up to what your non-negotiables are, then find somewhere else to go. Because at this point in time, to be quite honest, I haven't found a lot of safe community spaces. And that was actually why I felt called to not only help educate people about what that actually looks like, and also demonstrate it and continue to learn, because there's no ultimately absolutely safe space. So for example, we did a training for our team. Since I do education for massage therapists, I have a working with trauma and chronic stress in the massage therapy practice, but we wanted it for our entire team because a lot of it's that intake process. So we did the entire training just to help people understand what it looks like, how we can be more sensitive to specific people. And then very next day we had one of our practitioners lit a candle, right, in their session without asking the client. And this might not seem like a big deal, right? We just light a candle. Why not? But these are little things about what if it's not safe for someone because that candle has an allergen, that they're really highly sensitive. We see a lot of highly sensitive people in this community, and they didn't get permission to ask. Or what if there are other staff or other people that are experiencing sensitivity to it? It doesn't seem like a big deal. And it's really not. It's just more about how can we continue to ask questions, not make assumptions. And something as little as a candle being lit may be something we have to continue to, it's all about dialogue and saying, what's comfortable for you? Is this okay? It's a lot of asking questions. And even in any of the communities that I've worked with, it's, how is the lighting in here, guys? How's the music? Whatever's going on in the environment when people come into the space, it's asking questions to help them feel comfortable, greeting them in a way that's appropriate for them. Are you okay with a handshake? Not everybody wants hugs, and that's a lot of boundary crossing that we see in our spiritual community. Everyone wants to hug each other, and it's okay to not want that. So there's a lot of aspects, I think, but for me personally, I think because there wasn't any spaces, I ended up being in a leadership role where it felt safer because there is a power differential there where I am able to set the tone. And that actually helped me to heal my issues with community, because then I was attracting people and setting the bar, like, this is what's expected here. This is what's okay. And if this is happening, we're going to redirect in this group because we don't want to have drama. We don't want to be trauma dumping. We don't want to, this is not a way we want to connect as far as what I believe connection is. And I think because of that, I was just so fortunate to really then start to see and attract other people who were colleagues that were holding spaces in a similar way. And I was able to participate in some of those as a attendee. And that was very helpful and healing for me.
Oh, that's interesting about your own journey with that. I can see that. I can relate to that a lot. And so knowing where you stand with your needs and being okay with voicing them, and then also the group being considerate of those needs, while also, it sounds like, considering the group as a whole. And I love the idea of the open dialogue and the open communication. I do find that everyone's supposed to be accepting of everything, and that's not the case. It sounds like you're being compassionate or kind when you're just accepting of everything and what people do, but that's not helpful for the full group to just be accepting for everything. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and what are some of the examples that you have of why you find that people get maybe fearful of communities or nervous to be more involved in a community?
Well, in general, in a community, now we're just broadening this beyond maybe a spiritual dynamic of that type of niche of people. I believe because of our culture, I think that our culture is programmed. We are trained to not feel enough and not feel worthy of just being who we are. And there is, even just with all the stereotypes of, well, this group does this and this group does that, we learn that. And so then we begin to start creating or othering people and groups and feeling the difference instead of the connection of how are we similar. So there's already a psychological barrier for us to, unless we're aware of that, to say, let's not make assumptions. Let's try to go in and see what this group's about. And so I love asking questions and being curious about everything that I thought that I've known. And like, for example, we have a woman that lives close to the center that is a Jehovah's Witness. And she thought that because we had drum circles there, we were doing some sort of cult. And so she started sending us Jehovah's Witness letters. She wants to evangelize us. And I was like, I want to know why she got involved in the evangelist nature of the Jehovah's Witness church. I wanted to talk to her. She wanted to talk to me to convert me. I wanted to talk to her because I was like, I want to know your story. So instead of making assumptions, because I always feel that once you learn the story behind someone's journey, you can see why they had that perspective. And so by not making a judgment, by asking questions about her community, the Kingdom Hall that she goes to, I want to understand. And it made so much more sense. And it kind of fits into a puzzle piece of this. If we broaden out of what happens in community in general, maybe specifically in churches, her story was she was going to a church growing up, and she was going through confirmation, and she was asking all these questions about spirit, about God, and she wasn't getting answers. Instead, she was getting pushback. So she wasn't having the right people that felt safe to explore what her faith was. And instead of being accepted, because this is a key component in community, leadership or people in there that are accepting, open to your curious questions, but embracing your unique view and how you fit into the group. Instead, there was, well, if that leader's not confident in their faith and they feel challenged by it, it can create some sense of cognitive dissonance within them. And then they're like, well, maybe my faith isn't right. And then they can get testy. And that's when there keeps to be conflict, and conflict between a power differential of an older person and a younger person going through confirmation, that starts to not feel safe. And so she felt, oh my gosh. And then when she stopped coming, no one reached out to her. No one connected. And so when you're in that, where that's been your community, that's been your tribe, and all of a sudden you're not there, no one's reaching out to you, the limbic system, just from the body's perspective as a human being, as a human animal, we are wired that if we are not in a group, we don't feel safe. Our nervous systems do not feel safe. I don't care how many prayers, affirmations, journal prompts, meditations, you still have that foundational subconscious layer to your being. And for her, it made sense that when Kingdom Hall, when the Jehovah's Witness group reached out to her, they came in like, oh, we are here. And because she had so much trauma, a lot of times we get more of that black and white type thinking modalities in the brain. That's why she loves the fundamentalist. That is why she needs that belief system. It is very black and white. It is, this is what's happening when you go to heaven. This is what happens when you die. And there's no one out there to say that's right or wrong. For this person, for this human being, this is what helps her feel safe. This is what gives her quality of life. And she is a part of that organization and that community, because that is where she found her people. And I think we as humans don't know how to find our people because we don't know how to find ourselves. We don't even know who we are. And that's where we kind of mirror or mimic other people, especially if you've been through trauma and you're more of a people pleaser or a fawner. You're in that mode where you'll mirror whoever you're around and try to figure out what it looks like. And you're more easily susceptible to not really fully owning what you want and desire, because when you do find out what that is, you start to find yourself in specific interest groups. Maybe you like journaling, maybe you like biking, hiking, and then you find groups that are interested in that, and you can find that one component that you connect on. Because I guarantee no matter what community you enter into, no matter what their background is, whether it's political, religious, just a special interest, that if you can allow yourself to find that one common joining factor and keep the rest out, you can stay in a safe, amazing community space. And that's why I was thinking the other day, we were joking about how nowadays there's so much polarization in the rhetoric in our what's being shown to us in the media, that I think it creates this more like, oh my gosh, it's not safe, those people over there. And it creates more of a resistance to entering into any space. Well, they might be like this. And we start judging instead of being curious. And I said the other day, well, music used to bring the people together, right? You know, that song by Madonna, music brings the people. Yeah, that song. I was thinking about that and was like, yeah, but then I was like, wait a minute. No, there are people that are now polarized by music. Like, no, I don't like that. I hate that. And so I was like, well, what else brings people to music or together? And then we were like, well, food brings people together. We all have to eat food. And then we talked about, well, there's some still polarization around that. Like, well, you're eating this or you're eating meat or you're not eating meat. And then there's this whole thing. And I was like, oh, so obviously my passion for bringing people together is like, well, what brings people together? And then we just made a joke, air. Like, we have to breathe.
Being
And
alive.
you know what? Going back into that metaphorically, I was like, that is it. Because the breath that we take, that is the only tether to the present moment. And in the present moment is the only space in which we can actually connect with others. Because when we're telling a story of who they are, or telling a story about ourselves, about who we should be to fit in or be worthy of this group, then we're not actually going to be able to connect. So I was like, oh my gosh, that joke of an answer is actually an answer, you know, in a metaphorical way, that the only thing that we have in common is our breath. That is that present breath, the truth in where we are right in this now. So
Yeah, and just finding that with the person that you're with in that moment.
yes,
Is basic enough. And that's even, you know, connecting with community in that moment, is being fully present in that moment.
yes,
Yeah, I love that line of thinking there too, of the what's polarizing and what's not, but also the point to, you don't have to connect with a person on every level.
yes. That's a big one. That's a big one. People who are deep divers kind of want that, and then they're like, well, we had shallow conversations about the weather and it wasn't fulfilling. And you know, I agree. I understand that. I have a personality type that loves the deep connections, but it really is one thing that if you're called to a deep connection, there's definitely potentially, if this is you, there could be a lacking of deep connection with the self. Because when we, even though we want a deep connection with others, and it's possible to have those deep conversations, if we don't truly have anchored that deep inward space that we've cultivated within ourselves, that is who we are, we might unconsciously still want to fulfill it in another. Like, we need that deep connection with someone else. Because I fully believe that everything in our world is a reflection of our consciousness, where we are. That means our family, our groups, our organizations that we lead are reflections of who we are and how we are being. So it's just something to look at, potentially to see. But there's definitely aspects of meeting people and just talking about sports that can be amazing.
Yeah.
I love having silly, shallow conversations and really deep ones. And I think that that's just who I am as a dynamic person. There may be people out that, like, they only want that deep connection, and that's okay too. But I think it's unrealistic and more idealistic to expect, like you said, to meet on all levels with one individual or group.
Yeah. And the curiosity goes a long way with that, with when you're connecting with people, that it just seems like that does open the doors if there is going to go in that direction. And it could be on a surface level or on a really deep level. I met someone the other day, he was actually at your expo, and our first conversation was like the deepest conversation I've had with anybody on the first meet. And that's not for everybody. For us, that was fine. But you're right. I know that that's not the same conversation I'm going to have with somebody else with a different comfort level. And that's totally fine.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
So when we're talking about things like safety and worthiness and those things, I always like to ask the question, where do you think worthiness comes from? Feeling worthy?
I feel that worthiness, and this is just my take on it, I think worthiness is a construct that we make up when we compare ourselves to something. And so if you really step out of time, like when you're really present, like say you're enjoying an amazing piece of cake or amazing conversation with someone, and you're just lost in the flow state, you're not thinking about the future or the past, there is no question about worthiness in that space. So that's the practice for my own journey, is how can I be more present? How can I be more within my truth? And that's kind of part of Kundalini yoga as well, like releasing the stories through that practice, through the breath work, through the chanting, through the movements. And how can we do that so that we can not have to feel worthy of something? Because in that true state, you don't even have a question about it. It's not about, okay, I got to do some affirmations or do some more healing work to find myself to feel worthy enough. You can do it, yeah, but because all roads lead to Rome. All of this path work that you take to help with your own journeys, self-development, eventually I think leads to just being present and being okay with where you are and who you are.
So there's an inherent worth in being present, that it doesn't even become like the question of am I worthy is unnecessary when you actually just allow yourself to be present.
Yeah, because I mean, if you are, we can see it in children. Children express their worthiness innately because they don't have a question, because they don't have something to compare it to. And I know you know that's working with children, right? That's in us too. We've just gotten layers that we confuse ourselves with. We have to become a certain way. That's been hard for me as a perfectionist and like a recovering type A person, like, all right, I gotta, do this to be enough. But that's just really a lot of stories that peeling away at those.
Yeah. And that have just come from probably other people in life or our own assessment of situations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this might relate then, just in terms of, do you have a similar view on safety then? Where do you think safety comes from for people who are feeling safe in this world?
That's a really interesting question, because for some reason, I feel that people innately feel safe when they're around me. And I've been trying to figure this out because there's a lot of layers to it. What I found is it is the energy, a subconscious, emitting of how I feel to people. It is also because I don't hold a space of judgment. And I think when people can sense that unconsciously and through how I'm talking to them, how I'm looking at them, making eye contact with them, because I really do want to connect with them, not their story, not their identities. I mean, that's part of the layers that I'll see through, and I see that. So, and there's no bad part of that. It's part of our character, right? Of who we are. But there's sometimes these layers of the personality that's trying to hold up a mask to say, this is who I am. So can you see me? Because I'm good enough. And I'm like, I see past you that layer. I'm like, that's fine too. I like that mask. It's pretty. It's, you put it on and you made it up and it's great, but I see you too. I see both. And I think that's hard for people to understand because we either have to do a lot of work to find that space of non-judgment, and we rarely experience it within ourselves. So when someone holds that space, so if you enter into a space where you are accepted for who you are, not just with words, but with actions and with the actual consciousness, like it is a truly authentic, this group is really accepting, or this person, I think that creates safety. I think feeling heard, meaning they are listening to what you're saying, I think that also creates a sense of safety. And for some individuals, I'd say maybe for most, a sense of a likeness in, you get me, you understand whatever this topic is or whatever this interest that we have. So that's why whatever special interest group or community you're joining, if there's a commonality that you're like, we are aligned. I think that helps people feel safe. It helps the nervous system at least calm down from an animalistic perspective, because we're like, okay, they're like me. They're not going to kick me out of the tribe. I'm not going to be having to fend for myself. They at least got that. So I think that creates safety. But when it comes to logistics, like for what we try to do, for example, the Daughters of the Hollow, which is a women's group we run at Firefly, I attempt to, in my description of the class, to say what it is, what we do. And I've done videos on showing what it looks like, showing what the environment is. Because I think having a preconceived understanding of what things are, especially if someone's been reluctant to join a community, anyone out there who's a community leader or runs workshops or things like that, the more you can share exactly what's going to happen. Like there's a lot of things that get shrouded in magical language, or like you're going to experience this mystical thing, and that's fine because sometimes people want that experience. But I think what more often happens, especially it can lead to, I think, power differentials, especially in groups that maybe are like running covens or something like that. There's a lot of mystery around, like we don't know what happens. So a lot of times you come into a community like that, you don't really know what the etiquette is or what the etiquette should be that's safe. So this is where people who don't have discernment get involved in these very strange, maybe you could say it's culty, but just differentials in what is actually safe. And they're like, well, I'm just going along with what's supposed to be. So for our Daughters of the Hollow, for our Firefly Hollow yoga classes, we say this is what the etiquette is. This is what's expected. So you can look for that. I think when you can see that they're setting up a environmental awareness, so you can see what's going to happen. How much am I going to pay? How long is it? Who are the people? Can I see the faces or video of these practitioners? So if you're one that doesn't like to put your face out there or make a video of what you do, I think that creates safety too, because people are seeing who you are. And I think as much as you can show what is going to happen in a space, I think that creates safety. So authentically connecting without judgment, eye contact, really truly listening, and not one other big thing that I see often is if you are truly listening, you're there for someone in the capacity of just connection, or if you're perceiving they're seeking help. Don't make an assumption that someone wants your advice. I think just listening, like we make this assumption, oh, I got to fix you. I got to give you some sort of really amazing advice back or whatever, or maybe you won't like me back or something. And I think that is, again, don't make assumptions. I think we should always ask for a consent to, is it okay to shake your hand? Is it okay if I give you a piece of advice? Is it okay for this? Is it okay is a really good question to ask or to be asked, and as a green flag for when you're entering in safe spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. And transparency is what you were speaking to. And as a person who that's my, one of my things in life here is safety. I appreciate that so much, because in the past I would have deferred to, oh, those people know what they're doing. I feel uncomfortable, but they know. And so it gets muddied, it gets gray, it gets confusing. And then people can cross lines and you're like, I don't even know if that was a line cross or not. I don't really know. And you don't really 100% know if you can trust the person either. And so I think that was something that definitely attracted me to you, was you did right away say, I'm very mindful of safety in groups. And I was like, ooh, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
And just like the conversation, that's not always the case. I really appreciated, and the transparency around that and the honesty around that. That was very honest, that's not always the case in some groups. And I think that's important to recognize and not kind of like gaslight people about that either, that not all places are safe.
It's true. And even if they are not intending to be unsafe,
yes,
there's a lot of unawareness. And I think that was something I had to come to understanding and acceptance.
Yeah.
Because I had these expectations of like, well, that person has more training. They have a PhD. They have 2 PhDs. And over and over and over again, whether I would hire someone as a potential practitioner or want someone to collaborate with, or someone that was going to be a teacher of mine, I was continually still surprised of my expectations of not being, I'm like, wow. And so it kind of gave me this sense of, oh my gosh, what I'm doing is so needed. And I think it's because I'm neurodiverse. I have this ability to be very keenly aware of these subtle cues, of environmental differentials, of people's energy, of their intention. I see you could say the truth of what's going on. Even if I don't know exactly what it is, there's something that doesn't feel right there. And I'll figure out what it is sooner or later, but I can sense that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, for years, I had no idea that how I perceived the world was not how others perceive the world.
Yeah.
And I wish I could bestow that upon people, because if that would be the case, we would have a completely different world. And that's really my journey of helping people expand their consciousness, because that's all it is. Like intuition is not a gift. It is just it's an outcome of expanding your consciousness. That's what happens. It's just what happens. So I feel like the more we can do that, the more we can become aware ourselves and discern ourselves for what is safe.
Well, and let's kind of talk about, because I'll share a little bit about my experience. Just and tell me your thoughts about this, because one of the things that I had to figure out was that some situations that I perceived as unsafe were not actually unsafe. That it was a trigger, and it was something in me that created that sense. But then I really had to come to terms with like what is actually happening here, and what's something that's a perceived, and also really it's kind of like future telling, or like, well, this thing may happen, but it's not happening in this moment. So what do you say to anyone that might be experiencing that, particularly around people who want to be in communities?
I can't tell you how much I love this question, because this is the key. This is the secret sauce. If you are, and even if you haven't had a lot of trauma around community, this will still happen. And I can't tell you how many amazing practitioners or amazing potential community members have shied away, they've slipped quietly into the night and never to come back, or to never say anything. And I'm like, I know exactly what happened. And then we find out you find out for the grapevine what goes on. I'm like, that was their own projection. It was their own trigger. It was their own struggle to really work through what's going on. So I really do think in those spaces, I think it's really important, if you have triggers around that, to have some sort of either a counselor or a coach, someone that you can you really just throw things off and have a sounding board for, do you think this is one of my triggers? You know my story, you know my stuff. Is this, are these signs? How can you help me through this? Because it's so prominent. And let's see. This actually happened recently with me. So I had a new colleague that I started working with. And because in my journey, I had worked with a lot of individuals that didn't know how to have really safe boundaries. And because their spiritual idealism or their philosophy, they didn't feel that they were not having boundaries. So there was signs in the personality that I saw. Not only their aura was very bright, very most of the energy was above their body. They weren't necessarily grounded and anchored in. So they felt so good to be around. Like people like that feel good. They feel spiritually connected. Even if they're not grounded, they're just like, oh, and they're full of inspiration. And they even start talking like this, and they have like a flow with the tone of their voice. Like you can that's it. Like it's really it. So I had numerous individuals, not only from business trauma of being burned or being just, this is not safe, but individuals in personal life that have experienced like that. So I had a new colleague that came into my life that was showing all of those signs. And everything was like, this doesn't feel safe. I don't like this. The triggers. Oh no, I can't believe they're doing that. And the judgment would come up. The judgment of, oh my gosh, why is she doing that? And so I had to look at deeper, because something in my body said something's different about this. Even though this is what's going on, something's different. And what happened and turned out to be different was from learning more about this person, I learned more that they were really into Brené Brown. They're really into, wanting to connect and want the best for all. They're into just this loving people where they're at, and being able to lean in to have hard conversations. And they had gone through a lot of their own stuff that they had shared, that they had worked through. When someone can work their own stuff and be honest about what they've gone through and the challenges, not just, oh my gosh, I went through it, but like really the grueling parts of it, there's a lot more trust weight in my book of like, okay, this is, wow, they've gone through this. They've been able to look at their shadow at least as much as they could see. So because of the philosophy or the viewpoint they carry on, like, I want to lean in. I want to have hard conversations. I want to do the work, even though I might be spiritually bypassing or dissociated a little bit, or maybe in a little bit of delusion or illusion, or, whatever you want to call it. I was able to have a hard conversation with this person, and she was like, thank you, thank you so much. Because all I want is to help people. And there's a lot of people that never get that hard conversation, that either a organization or someone just says, nope, we're not going to hire you, or, hey, I don't want to have you, or they don't keep inviting you to their women's circle or their birthday parties or whatever. And it's no one's has the self confidence or let's say the bravery, the courage to say, let me talk to this person. And even if they may take it personally, let me say, please don't take this personally. I want to let you know, I see you. I see your worth. I see who you are. I see what your intention is. But I think that this might be how you're coming off. And I think this is why A, B, C, and D are happening. It's also a trigger for me. So I want to thank you for bringing it up so that I can work through this. And then there was this oh my gosh. And so what happens, the magic that happens in community, when you are able, I'm getting goosebumps all over my body thinking about this. When you're able to lean in and have courage and bravery and have hard conversations and be able to come to the other side, there is a deeper bond. Yeah. And this is what we need. We are so quick to reactionary, let me just run away. Mm-hmm. But when you can go through it and you have someone that's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I triggered you. I had no idea. And this is why I think the team that I built today, it's so weird to say I built it, because I feel like spirit built it through me learning all these triggers. Like, that's not the person. It's discerning. They came to work with me too. It's not like I built it. I'm almost like, I feel like the team at Firefly has been built for the team, for each of their individual and our collective journey of learning together. And how can we have these hard, challenging things that we're going through, inspire each other. And that happens through the personalities we have are open and want to have the challenging conversations, even if they're like, yep, temporarily that hurt, or I took that personally, or my ego was fried for a second. And that is the magic. It really is.
Yeah, that I get the little like feel good about that too, because it really is like the community itself is its own thing. It's its own being that is for everybody who wants
Yeah.
to be involved. And I love the idea of the solution is not just to disconnect when something feels weird. It's not just to
Yeah.
go away, but to sit in the discomfort and talk to people. And how amazing is it if you're a person who is okay with people having those conversations with you, and then also being the person to receive those conversations as well.
Yeah. The biggest challenge as a business owner has been convincing new team members that we actually do that we actually can have those hard conversations, because they don't believe us. And it's serious. It's like serious thing. And I'm like, okay, like, but when they do, when it ends up happening, their whole brain goes, whoa. And then they feel safer. And then they're more likely to be anchored. I wish there was some way I could speed up that process and, make a certain thing happen at the beginning that they have to come ask and like lean in, and they do it. And then we're like, oh, you do support me and you're not judgmental. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Because of the, the unfortunate experiences people have at other work environments, there is a lot of leaders that are in training that are learning more so how to be leaders. There's no bad leaders out there. There's just leaders who are learning.
I agree.
And I mean, you could say they're bad, but I don't like that polarized view, because that gets creating judgment. If you want to help other leaders, you're not going to come to a leader, especially someone in a position of power, and say, you're a bad leader. That's not going to fix it. They, a lot of times, if they're in that mindset, won't even be open because their ego is so involved in what they're doing. But coming to them and leading through example or suggesting or being like, hey, let me, what do you think about this? That's more likely to change things, instead of saying they're a bad leader, or my manager sucks, or whatever people start talking about them. Like, I think people need to understand that most people don't know how to do it. Leaders, true leaders, in my opinion, don't know what the heck they're doing as they start out. That's the archetype of Aries, even astrologically. Like, Aries are traditionally the leaders that just are headstrong. They're pioneers. They don't know what they're doing. They just go off and just take risks and figure it out. And then you have other leadership personalities like Leo and Capricorn in, the whole, if you want to look at archetypes, but they learn and they are willing to take risks and be in a situation that is vulnerable, because leading is a vulnerable position. Because if you're letting people down, especially if you're not necessarily a narcissistic person, you're actually someone who cares about people, it is even more vulnerable, I think, because you are looking at what the outcomes of what you have to give and to help your community grow. So,
yeah, I have a lot of compassion for leaders, because not everybody wants to be in that position or feels comfortable. And I think that's a good question then. So you being in a position like that, is there anything that you like, anything else that you would like people to know about leaders' needs, or even like, because you come from a different perspective. You're looking at the entire group, as opposed to if I'm in your group, I'm just thinking about me and maybe other people if I'm that type of person. So yeah, what would you like people to know about how to be in community in terms of leader needs and the whole group?
Wow. All right. So I think that there's many different types of leaders. So I can just speak for myself and some of the leaders that I've experienced. I think that every leader has an amazing team behind them. And even if they're starting out without an organization, they have a team of their own confidence, maybe their own intuition. They have to pull on resources around them to make whatever they're trying to make work. So it's whether you're doing it solo at first, or you have people that there's usually someone that's supporting or saying, we're going to, support you. And if you don't have that support, I think that's important. That is very important. And it's important to look at, if you're a leader or you have a leader in your organization that needs support, look at their personality. If they're a very fiery person, they need a very grounded person to help them be slower, to calm down and take it easy. If they're very air-like, they're talkative, they're communicative, they're too fast, they're scattered, again, they need a very earthy person to help them. And I would say if they are too hardened, they need a very water, emotional, compassionate, soft, yet boundaried person who can help them open up instead of because leaders tend to have a lot more on their plate. So just from a nervous system perspective, they're more likely to get into fight or flight mode because you have to have the energy to push through. And that means pushing through, getting in beta brainwaves where you're like, I have to do it. I have to maybe drink more coffee or stimulants. This is an unhealthy aspect of a leader if someone's having to do all the workload, but they're usually managing a lot. And they are more likely, if they don't have really good self-care, really good tools for managing and balancing their elemental nature or whoever they are, they're more likely to get frustrated. They're more likely to become impatient. They're more likely to make decisions that maybe aren't always the best for the group. Even if they just keep, going, they'll do it. I think they need compassion. Most people have no awareness of how much leaders do. And what I see the perspective is, oh my gosh, this person who's a CEO of this company or this whatever, they just sit back on their butts while everybody makes money, and they make money for them. That's from a business perspective. And I think that is not the truth at all. A lot of times business leaders are doing more. They have higher level skill sets and they're handling more of a load. If I would start over right now today, I would go and I would move to a new town. I would go find someone who's leading a business like myself. And I go in and be like, hey, I want to see clients. I want to do workshops. I want to help out. I can help out in the background, but I don't want to lead a business. Not that I don't want to lead my business now, but it is a lot more work and there's a lot less time, at least this point in my journey. We're moving out of that because I have everything delegated, but there was a lot less time for about 5 years in my journey of actually doing work that is working one-on-one with clients and making a bigger impact with my skill set, versus I'm behind the computer doing admin stuff that someone else could do, but it's a matter of resources for your organization. If you have the resources to delegate that to someone else, that's their expertise.
And so being a good community member is kind of being considerate of the leader as well, and kind of the leader themselves is considering the whole group. And so maybe even just considering their needs is just helping the community as a whole too. Yeah.
Most leaders don't know when to stop. They don't take care of themselves as much because they have a lot more on their plate. This is just a leader that's maybe in an imbalance. They're more likely to be burned out and be stressed. And they, a lot of times, don't have a lot of understanding from the organization or the people that are their community that they're following. There's a lot of they don't understand. And so what happens to a community leader who doesn't have a good group of support or a team or colleagues that are also leaders that they can connect with? They could say, these are also entrepreneurs or tribe of people that they get me because they lead organizations too. So it's that factor that connects them, that thing that is a common interest thing, that leaders can feel alone a lot. They can feel alone in what they do. So that's something to also consider and say, wow, there's heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? Like if you want to call it, there's a lot of responsibility and there's a lot of potential disconnect in leading the group. And also as a leader, depending on what you're involved, if you're a leader of a family, it's a little bit different, but in a business situation, there is definitely the balance of me being vulnerable and open and caring and nurturing with my team, but also having to have business boundaries and not share my personal life. It's really important because there can still be, crossover there. That's very important. And because of that, you can see that in the clinic, for example, we have service providers that are closer and, I don't say best friends, but they get to hang out all the time. And it's not always appropriate in organizations say, I'm going to hang out with my boss like every weekend and we're going to go do these things, these specific activities. And that's one of the things that leaders, it's not always appropriate. And so don't take it personally if they're like, we can't do that. In the situation, I can't hang out with my clients or my team members in this way. Yeah.
And you've helped really kind of give us a better understanding of, because when we're talking about community, we are talking about like businesses, family, churches, spiritual communities, clubs, anything. And so the idea of being transparent within the group, being able to say things when you need to say things, but also being conscious of your own maybe triggers, those types of things. Maybe potentially working on those if you need to, but also being considerate to the needs of the group, and having a good understanding of what actually makes up the community from the top down seems like a helpful thing to kind of keep in your awareness also.
I agree. Yes.
So anything else that you can think of just as far as what you would like people to know, or maybe some final points?
I would like people to know that I think community and connecting in with a safe space even if it's just 2 or 3 people, is the most foundational thing I think you can do to heal your nervous system at this time. I think that connection is what we're lacking. And when we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable in the space that we discern is actually safe, we don't have the opportunity to heal. We don't have the opportunity to support our nervous systems from either recovering from or guarding against mental health issues. And there's a mental health crisis because we don't have that connection. There is an epidemic of loneliness. And this is why I feel even more passionate about community and cultivating communities. And it is something that the world around us is a reflection of us. It's opportunities, it's mirrors, it's doorways for us to find out more about who we truly are. And that's the journey of life, figuring out who we truly are. And it doesn't stay static. It changes, it evolves, it grows, it's multidimensional. And it's a beautiful experience. And if we hide ourselves away from community, not only will our nervous systems suffer potentially our mental health, but we won't have the opportunity to connect with potentially life-changing experiences through people. Because if you take away all of our, most people, if you say that you only have 5 minutes left to live, it's not about, maybe they'll say, I want to eat a piece of cheesecake or something, but then they'll want to hang out with somebody. People, for the most part, those are the experiences that are the most foundational to giving our life meaning. And if we're cutting ourselves away from our potential meaning, how are we going to find our purpose?
Yeah, I love every part of that. Yeah, the very thing that hurt us sometimes is people, but the very thing that will heal us is people.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just one person, like you said, maybe it's 2 or 3 people. It doesn't have to be, a giant group of people. Yeah. Not to be fearful of that, but to lean into that, and we'll learn so much about ourselves. And because people really are focused on purpose too, and so that's definitely a motivating factor too.
Yeah.
All right. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time and all your wisdom. Tell us a little bit about where people can find you, specifically what services you're offering right now.
Sure. So you can find me at Cara Lovehart on Instagram or on Facebook. And we can find more about me on my website, firefulhallowellness.com. I'm on that for my background and my bio. And I'm working with executive coaching for intuition development. I think it's important that leaders, and I have a term in one of my podcasts, I call it, are you a healer or a light leader? And that definition, I say, is someone that's really here to dive within themselves and to shine light on their own shadows, their own fears, overcome them with courage so they can then lead others. And that is who I work with, people who are like, I'm really devoted to doing that. And as you grow your intuition, as you get really in touch with yourself through the process of, that looks like coaching, that looks like readings, it looks like body work if someone's local. There's a lot of things that from a mind body perspective can block the nervous system from being fully online. If you just talk about it from just trauma, the brain does not connect to intuition, to creativity if it's in fight or flight, fawn or freeze. There are ways with tools like yoga, body work, energy work. There are many tools, breath work, to help calm that. Because if you don't calm that, you're not going to be able to connect with that truth of who you are. And that truth of who you are is the doorway and the path to following your intuition in who to work with, who to hire, what date to schedule a workshop. Is this the right day to use or spend income? Or anything when it comes to a business or an organization and building it. And I think creating those safe spaces is also a big part of being trauma informed in working with community, and working with your organization is part of what I love doing. And you can learn more about that through the website.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time with me. Your insight to these questions, and then also just the work that you've done and the path that you've gone on to get to this point. We appreciate that, and I'm sure the people that had a part in that journey too. So thank you to all of them as well. So
yes.
Thank you, Cara.
Thanks for having me, Sarah. Thank you for listening to the Mind Body Detox Podcast. If you love this podcast, share it with others and leave us a review. Your reviews help us more than you know and supports us continuing to make episodes and being heard from all over the world. You can also follow the link in our show notes to submit a topic that you would like to hear on the show.